Then Esther spoke to Hathach and commanded him to go to Mordecai and say, "All the king's servants and the people of the king's providences know that if any man or woman goes to the king inside the inner court without being called, there is one law, to be put to death, except the one to whom the king holds out the golden scepter so that he may live. But as for me, I have not been called to come in to the king these 30 days. It is Monday, the 31st day of July 2023, the final day of the month of July, and it's time for the reading of our devotional thought for today. Our devotional thought for today comes from the devotional book entitled Truth for Life by pastor and author Alistair Begg. Today's devotional thought is entitled Bringing Out the Best in People. And our verses today, Esther chapter 4, verses 10 and 11, and it reads, Then Esther spoke to Hathach and commanded him to go to Mordecai and say, All the king's servants and the people of the king's providences know that if any man or woman goes to the king inside the inner court without being called, there is one law, to be put to death, except the one to whom the king holds out the golden scepter so that he may live. But as for me, I have not been called to come in to the king these 30 days. That's Esther chapter 4, verses 10 and 11. Alistair Begg writes, Mordecai had made a big request of Esther to go to the king to beg his favor and to plead with him on behalf of her people. And that's found in Esther chapter 4, verse 8. Esther basically responded, That's easy for you to say. You're not the one doing this. Many of us respond similarly when there is some great drama before us, adventure awaiting us, or challenge confronting us. We tend to put on the brakes and insist, let's not get carried away. Let's use our minds and be sensible. It was risky for Esther to do what Mordecai was asking of her. The likelihood of Esther losing her head was significant. The only chance of pulling off such a scheme was if the king indicated his approval by holding out his golden scepter, and Esther was not hopeful. She didn't feel she had special access or leverage to go in uninvited, as she had recently slipped down the list of the king's desirables. Esther recognized that Mordecai and the Jewish people had a major problem, but at least at first she didn't see herself included in that problem. She was not going to play the beauty card or the queen card. Frankly, she didn't want to play any card. The cost of getting involved was too great. We can be encouraged by the faint-heartedness of Esther. When the words of Haman plot reached her, she was not enthusiastic about taking the initiative on behalf of God's people. If we're honest, we see our own hearts in her response. Most of us are reluctant to step out and to put our reputation or comforts or income, let alone our lives, in jeopardy for the living God and for His people. We tend to echo Esther's instinctive reaction. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going there. Nevertheless, God didn't set Esther aside. Esther would go to the king, and Esther would by means by which God's people would be saved. God brings the best out of His people in order to achieve His purposes, even when we say no at the outset. It's remarkable. Be encouraged then to go and do what you know God is asking you to do, even when, indeed, especially when you feel faint-hearted. Great encouragement for the faint-hearted, which would include me, knowing that God will never command us to do anything that He has not gone before us to prepare the way. Well, that concludes our devotional thought for today, trusting that you were encouraged, ministered to, and was emboldened to do what God places in your heart to do, even today. Bringing out the best in people, the devotional thought for this 31st day of July, 2023. Those of you reading through the Bible in a year, your assignment is Psalms 54, 55, and 56, as well as the book of Acts, chapter 21, verses 1 through 17. Clive Walsh here. May the Lord richly bless you and your family today in a special way.